100 Winters, Retracing the Great Race Against Death. Written by Jonathan Nathaniel Hayes. Illustrated by Caleb Gingras. Chapter 16. Shaktoolik. After we committed gluttony at the local pizza parlor, I walked out with our host, Jeff Erickson, to the high school where an old-fashioned cakewalk was being held, raising money for the families grieving the tragic plane crash that had taken members of the high school basketball team on their flight from Unalakleet to Nome. My knee was too inflamed to participate, but I soaked in the sense of community like a medicine. I hadn't witnessed a cakewalk since I was a kid in the Appalachian Mountains, in the church my father pastored, where the smell of cornbread and chicken still lingered in my memory. Jamie, Jeff, and Caleb took part while I spoke with the school principal and some village elders. The village of Caltag asked me to deliver this to you, I said, pulling out a poster filled with handwritten notes and prayers from the village of Caltag, a giant sympathy card stitched together in grief and solidarity. A few eyes welled immediately. Jonathan, stay a couple days and present this at the memorial service in Potlatch, the principal suggested. I'd be honored, but this is for your community. We can only stay tomorrow for the school. We'll be hitting the trail early the next morning. Are you sure the students are in a good spiritual and emotional headspace for presentations tomorrow? Yes, he replied. It will be timely, positive, and a healthy distraction. The next day, I presented to the elementary, middle, and high school groups. And as with the children on the Yukon villages, I felt a piece of my heart pulling away to stay behind with this beautiful, resilient community. That evening, Donna Erickson served up whale and other native delicacies, but the truest delicacy of all was the hospitality and generous fellowship. Still, Robert Frost's words whispered in my mind, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I've promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." The next morning, a gnawing tension crept in as I readied the sled. My dogs and I would be maneuvering through plowed town streets and wind-swept sea ice, surface that offered zero grip for my brake. One misstep, one twist of the knee, and we'd be finished. Mercifully, we left town without injury or embarrassment. Our team followed a frozen creek bed out, and Jeff Erickson, standing sentinel from an overpass, waved goodbye as we passed underneath. Then came the Blueberry Hills. Iditarod lore speaks of them notoriously, for good reason. They rise like giants from the tundra, one steep ascent and then a steep descent, only to rise again. The dogs pulled well, refreshed from the day's rest, but they were pulling heavy, resupplied from our Unalakleet cache. We now carried enough feed, meat, and gear for 16 dogs, 4 men, and 3 machines for up to 7 days. To make matters worse, the temperature swung to a positive 38 degrees Fahrenheit above freezing. A century ago, Miles Ganagnon faced the same stretch under far different conditions, minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, breaking trail inland to avoid unstable sea ice. He snowshoed in front of his team for hours, covering only 12 miles in 5 hours before veering back toward the coast. We made much better time than he, but my 38 degrees Fahrenheit carried its own cruelty, wet, sticky snow, and the sled as heavy as a freight car. To help my dogs, I jogged along the sled on every uphill. Surprisingly, my swollen knee didn't mind this motion. The forward motion supported by the brace Jeff had given me seemed not to trigger any more pain than that which I'd grown accustomed to. I feared blowing it out again on the coast, but that ghost kept its distance for now. Halfway through the punishing portage, we found a Bureau of Land shelter cabin, 14 by 14 feet of rough-hewn refuge. If I were a single man, I told the guys, this would be all the house I'd ever need. I went inside and left notes for a few Iditarod friends I knew would be passing by this way in a few weeks. But the day was too gorgeous to stay cooped up. The sun beamed down in full golden brilliance. I fed the dogs, checked feet, and set a 2-hour alarm. We hung our sweat-wet garments on the corners of the cabin logs and took our cue from the dogs, sprawling out on the deck like sun-drunk seals, soaking in warmth and silence. It would be one of the last midday stops together. Out here on the coast, trails between villages were starting to show signs of travel. Snow machiners, Jamie and Jeff, no longer burdened by breaking trail and exploring, could move faster. They'd push on ahead to the next village rather than wait around for a midday meetup. Coming down out of these hills was one of the most euphoric runs of my life. A downhill switchback of moguls that twisted endlessly through brush, perhaps 8 feet tall. I couldn't see the front half of my team most of the time, just movement, noise, and trust. Had we taken this in reverse, it would have been brutal, every turn snagging on the brush with such a heavy sled. But we had gravity on our side, and once I figured out how to steer this freight sled through those curves, the whole ride transformed. Wait on the left runner, brake slightly, shift to the right runner, release the brake, ride the turn, then repeat on the opposite side, again and then again. It became a dance, my own sled ballet. And I relished every turn. Every turn was threading a needle through a frozen labyrinth. At the bottom of the hill, Alaska blessed me again. The sea opened up into a canvas of fire. A red sunset poured itself over the ice, and there, rising from the bay like a leviathan from the sea, was what the natives call Kikitak, an island ignited by the setting sun. On a map, it's called Bellsborough Island, and it took my breath away, the most beautiful sunset of my life. But the day wasn't done with me yet. We came to a stretch of lagoon ice so polished by the wind that it looked like glass. I could see straight through into the dark, churning water beneath. I grabbed my GoPro and filmed it as we crossed in the purple light of evening, thrilling and fragile, like running across an abyss on stained glass. Then, the worst thing that could happen did. An Arctic fox, the first and only one I've ever seen, darted across the ice ahead of us, its white coat flashing against the steel blue surface. The dogs saw it too, and they erupted into chase. The sled jolted. The brake barely slowed them. And worse, the sled whiplashed back and forth in a tailspin. We fishtailed hard left, then right. By the sheer momentum, I held on like a man being dragged behind a speedboat after losing his skis. I shouted, I braked, I prayed. Nothing helped. Then I spotted hope, a patch of snow ahead, about 10 feet wide, a foot deep, wind packed into a drift. If I had any shot at regaining control, it would be there. The moment came. I jumped off the runners, both boots slamming onto the brake, hands locked on the handlebow. Whoa, easy. I said, stretching my voice low and calm with as much authority as I could muster. The fox was gone, but its scent lingered, and a few dogs slowed, confused. That was all the window I needed to assert control, enough leverage to reel the rest in. I caught my breath, the sled finally still. But now, no trail markers, no visible path, just a vast frozen sea and a faint line of the hills behind me. Eventually, Caleb caught up, and I asked him to scout ahead to the brush-covered hummock. He found there what I was hoping for, a machine track, and soon we were closing in on the lights of Shaktoolik. Pulling into town, down Main Street, children were out playing. Small, loose dogs ran up to offer challenge to the team and then fled away in fear. Some native kids ran along beside the sled. I invited one boy, maybe 10 years old, to hop on the sled and guide me to the home of Pastor Barefoot. He grinned wide and pointed the way. At the parsonage, Jeff and Jamie came out to help bed the dogs. But word had gotten out. Kids spilled from alleys and doorways to gather around our team. My Sapalas soaked it up. They loved people. They loved children even more. The kids grilled me on the dogs' names, as if testing me. And when they got to my little lead girl, they asked, "Vodka? Like the drink?" They howled with laughter. "This one's name is Vodka. Hey, this one's name is Vodka," they reported to their other friends. But the main event was Yakusha, Blackie, our only dark-coated dog. With his long black fur and piercing blue eyes, the kids could not get enough of him. "Look at this one. I like this one." I knocked on the door. "You must be Jonathan. And you must be Pastor Barefoot." Handshake. Hug. Pastor Barefoot was our host for the night. He had asked me to speak at his Bible study that evening, but our timing didn't allow it. He had recently lost his wife, and though he welcomed us with the warmth of a seasoned shepherd, I saw a cloud in his eyes, loss that didn't need to be spoken, to be felt. Then I remembered this village, this stretch of coast. This is where the trail of my expedition crosses the footsteps of my dog's ancestors. 100 years ago, Leonard Seppala mushed here from Nome to receive the serum. Tomorrow, I would stand at the same fork and make the same decision he did, to take the safe coastal trail or trust the wild, unpredictable bay ice of Norton Sound. But that was tomorrow's decision. Tonight, it would be time to take off the knee brace, break bread with new friends, and sleep. That night, praying over the meal, holding Pastor Barefoot's hand, I asked God for the peace that surpasses understanding to rest upon his home. Thanks for listening to another chapter of 100 Winters, Retracing the Great Race Against Death. If you are enjoying this, we simply ask that you return the favor. Go to the show notes below and click on the link to Amazon, where you can order a hardcover, a paperback, or an ebook version of this new book. And until next chapter, Godspeed and happy trails.